Imagine you're about to hear a bizarre, genuine story, one that kicks off with a guy hammering a piece of paper to a church door and winds up with an entire continent blowing up for 30 years. Here we go. Let's do this. Religion was a significant thing for practically everyone in the old days. Then comes this German monk, Martin Luther. He had a large list and posted it at the castle church in Wittenberg. And when you looked at it closely, there were 95 reasons on the list as to why the Catholic Church was doing things incorrectly. Some of those justifications truly made a good deal of sense. But the guards had already taken the list down. Crisis averted, eh? No. Soon there were riots all over Central Europe. The Holy Roman Empire's leader said he had one last trick up his sleeve. Then he drank and smiled. But that one tiny hammer moment began a long, horrible 120-year run of wars that finished with something called the 30 Years' War. It became one of the largest, longest, and most catastrophic wars Europe has ever seen. Luther's work cleaved the Catholic Church right down the middle. Let's see the contrasts between both sides. Catholics think the Pope is the boss of the whole Church. The Bible is the most significant guide for life for Protestants. Catholics think you need trust in God, but you also have to conduct good deeds, like religious ceremonies, to go into heaven. Protestants believe that you only have to believe in Jesus and his wonderful grace to be saved. That implies Catholics have 7 specific ceremonies while Protestants only have 2. In short, Catholics appreciate costly decorations and festivities. Protestants keep things considerably simpler. People loved what Luther and John Calvin taught. The printing press, a kind of miraculous machine for the times, propagated Protestantism extraordinarily fast all over Germany and Europe. We name this joyful moment the Reformation. The response of the various countries was rather different. England, Scotland, the Netherlands, the Nordic countries and sections of Switzerland and Germany all became Protestant. The rest of Germany and Switzerland and Spain, Italy, France, Portugal, Austria, Poland, and Ireland all said a resounding no to the new branch. That began the Counter-Reformation. Spain proclaimed proudly it was time to battle the heretics. The Spanish Inquisition got a lot stronger. But in the Council of Trent, numerous Catholic bishops and intelligent theologians met to look at the concerns Protestants pointed out. They decided to properly explain their lessons, defend their customs and old beliefs. Peace was never a possibility, like in most religious confrontations throughout history. Tensions were mounting between countries and inside them. In the Germanic lands, the tensions were severe. The Holy Roman Empire was officially Catholic, although not all of it was fully Catholic. The Protestant areas established the Protestant Union, which sounded extremely wonderful. The Catholic areas made up the Catholic League, which had a much lamer name. And families who had just been German were suddenly either Catholic or Protestant. So a boy named Bottgert couldn't date Truy since she was a nasty Catholic. He had to date Griet, a decent Protestant girl. That foolish anecdote reveals how bitter feelings ran deep between neighbors. Let us meet John George I. The Duke of Saxony's eldest son was lucky enough to be his heir, and would therefore be the next ruler of that nation. Then when his darling dad died and his uncle was in charge for a while, finally it was Johnny's turn to take over. So what did he get? He had more than 300 regions he might have bought, but he took Wittenberg. That's where Martin Luther had posted his 1-star rating 100 years before. Wittenberg was the very core of Protestantism. That must have been very, very stressful for poor John. I'm sure he'll find a safe manner of dealing with all that tension. No particular reason. We will look at the Kingdom of Bohemia. Prague is a great city, isn't it? Most Bohemians were Protestant, but the rich rulers in Prague were not. But the Protestants had had enough of being shoved around someday. They invaded Prague Castle and hurled 2 Catholic leaders and their miserable secretary out the window. This wasn't even the first time people in Prague hurled officials out of windows. They did the same wild thing 200 years before. That launched a huge revolt against the Catholic Church and the affluent rulers. Well, guess what? This time it sparked the 30 Years' War. The battle may be divided into 4 phases. Each was worse than the last. Phase 1, the Bohemian phase. The Bohemians, primarily Protestants, thought they would undoubtedly win after the window throwing. No, they had their asses kicked. The Catholic League brought in the Habsburgs, a super-powerful family that reigned over Spain, Portugal, parts of France and Italy, and much of the Holy Roman Empire. How did they become so strong? Smart marriages, lots of inbreeding so they wouldn't lose power. They frightened the Protestant Union, which didn't want to fight them directly. Our boy John played neutral, but did a little support to the Protestants on the quiet. Other Protestants helped the Habsburgs and Catholics suppress the uprising and make peace. That would have been the end, barely 7 years. But then came the Danes. The second phase was the Danish phase. The Danes assumed the Habsburgs were fatigued from their last conflict, so they attacked like brave idiots. Well, that went all to hell, but John had a fantastic opportunity. He changed sides to the Catholics and joined the emperor to battle the Danish. Saxony's support was a significant reason the Danish fell so heavily. John got upgraded to an electorate, one of the 7 fancy princes who got to pick the next emperor. Fancy, eh? And then time for a cold one. That could have been the end only 11 years, but then there was the Swedish. The third phase was the Swedish phase. The Swede knew how to fight a real war. They had muskets and little cannons, and they were a big problem for the Catholics. John spotted another opening. He became a Protestant and went over to the Swedish king, Gustavus Adolphus. Some say he changed sides because the emperor's forces kept robbing his villages. That must have hurt. The war was going well. No one could beat the fantastic Swedish monarch. But then he died in a noisy brawl. John lost trust in the Protestants and went back to the Catholics and fought with the Habsburgs again. That didn't go so well either. Saxony keeps getting trampled and losing fights. The fourth phase was the French phase. The French were tired of the Habsburgs' power, so they launched war on the Habsburgs, Spain, Italy, and the Holy Roman Empire all at once. That was pretty brave of you. Religion was no longer the primary motive for the fight, rather it was power and influence that counted much more. John finally ceased changing sides and stuck with the Catholics. He fought the Protestants, he fought the Swedes, he fought the French, and he kept losing over and over. Saxony was stomped down again and again. This time John had neither the gift of gab nor the silver tongue to talk his way out or switch. His people perished by the thousands, his economy fell, and drinking stopped being fun. It was a severe, sad problem. John drank heavily, maybe to forget the awful stress, or maybe he genuinely liked the flavor of German beer. But he drank and drank and drank again. One tale has him drinking nearly 20 liters of alcohol in a day, or around 80 beers in today's packaging. When he wanted to get away from it all, he went to his private vineyard and drank his local wine happy. This earned him the comical nickname Beer George, or Johnny Beer. His poor wife Magdalena was not in the least amused. She thought of his health and his thoughts every day. She wished she could talk to him herself, but requested the local preacher to help instead. The next Sunday, the pastor told John that his drinking was getting out of hand and was affecting him and everyone around him. John, presumably a bit tipsy, just laughed it off. But he admired the good intentions of the pastor, and so he gave the church a gift every single year. Not money, not soldiers-only wine. Always exactly 49 3/4 barrels, since he didn't want the priest to drink too much. Isn't he the best? Then one day a man came in with a note, and the war was finished. Woohoo! While John was busy being in love with his drinking problem, the main powers of Europe grew totally exhausted of warring after 30 long, bloody years. Together they all signed the Treaty of Westphalia, which brought peace at last and transformed the map of Europe forever. The Holy Roman Empire and the Habsburgs were no longer the superpowers. France was the new #1 superpower. The Dutch Republic and Switzerland at length became independent. Sweden got certain portions of Germany, but it was the ordinary poor who paid the most price. About half of what is now Germany perished in all the warfare, terrible starvation, and horrific diseases. So what was the eventual fate of our intoxicated hero? You'd think he'd have died for sure from alcohol poisoning, but unbelievably he didn't. He lived a healthy, albeit rather obese, life until he was 71, which was a pretty excellent age in those days. When he died, his eldest son took command. The years the Holy Roman Empire slowly but definitely began to fall apart. That's the truth behind the very complicated 30 Years' War and a drunk kid named Johnny Beer.